Always great to have Peter King in the New York City Man Cave. Memorable appearance last week, and the always quotable Peter King. How are you, Pete?
Everything's just dandy. Everything's just pure as the driven snow.
A public apology for what happened last week. If somehow, some way, something got lost in translation that you didn't know your microphone was on, I will take the blame for that, okay?
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Your microphone is on.
Thank you.
All right. I know you don't have any sleep, and you come in here, as you say, for free. By the way, it's the mmqb.com is the website. So that just cost a lot of money right there, Pete. So.
Okay, I'll pay up.
You will?
Yeah.
All right. I like this. We may get something out of this here. Charles Barkley, you said after Charles hung up.
I actually have a Charles Barkley story.
All right. I'm ready.
In 1982, I'm at the Southeastern Conference basketball tournament covering it for the Cincinnati Enquirer, covering the University of Kentucky. So somebody's playing Auburn. You know, those games, there's like 4 or 5 of them in a day. So I'm at the game. Auburn's playing somebody. There's Wimp Sanderson, one of the funniest looking men ever to roam the coaching sidelines.
Yeah.
And Charles Barkley was on the bench at the end of a blowout. You know, he was a big star. And I look over at the bench, and Charles Barkley is peeling open a Goo Goo Cluster. Do you know what a Goo Goo Cluster is? It's a candy bar from Nashville. And it's got chocolate on the outside. It's got either pecans or cashews. And then it's got caramel on the inside. And he ate 2 Goo Goo Clusters during a timeout at the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center in Birmingham, Alabama. And I said, man, what a country. You're on the bench in this game and you get to eat candy bars? How great is that?
And we wonder how he got his nickname, the round mound
of rebound.
Yes, yeah. Rob Gronkowski done for the year, ACL, MCL. What that means, how does that change the Patriots' game plan as they move into the postseason?
You know, I think, I wrote something this morning in my column on Julian Edelman, who's got 23 catches in the last 3 weeks. He might have 23 catches Sunday, this week. Tom Brady has just a diminishing number of people he can rely on. And Rob Gronkowski, I think, is a huge loss, especially because in January you need some physical players. I thought one of the really big swings of talent yesterday is Rob Gronkowski leaving the Patriots and Dennis Pitta being added to the Ravens. And I talked to Pitta after the game. I think Dennis Pitta, he looks so good, so nimble, so fluid, and, diving for balls, jumping in the end zone. I think Dennis Pitta's reemergence could really have an effect on the AFC playoffs.
If it was Ravens-Patriots right now?
In New England, I'd still take New England, but boy, it'd be a 2-minute warning game.
Yeah, I said that to Tony, that the Ravens are still sneaky good.
They are.
The defense has been as good, if not better, than last year.
Yeah.
We just didn't realize that Ray Rice wasn't going to be able to run this year.
Yeah.
And now you get Pitta back. Imagine if Rice is able to run. That's a formidable team back in the mix here.
I think it is, too. And I'm not blaming it altogether on Ray Rice at all. I think their line has been mediocre. I mean, Marshall Yanda's not had a great year. Gino Gradkowski has really, I think, struggled a lot at center. But, again, they're the type of team that, you don't want to let them in the tournament. And they're going to be in the tournament. You look at it right now. Now, they got a tough remaining schedule.
They got Detroit
really tough.
Coming up
they got
Monday
Detroit
night.
On the road, Patriots at home, Bengals on the road.
Man.
They're going to have to probably win 2 of those to be the 6th seed, but I'm not doubting the almighty Flacco right now.
Whoever wrote that narrative can shove it where the sun don't shine. Peyton Manning, after the Broncos win. First of all, I didn't know anybody said shove it where the sun don't shine anymore. Like in the 70s, you might have said that. Peyton being sensitive with the cold weather critics. I said this to Tony Dungy. I don't care what you do to Tennessee in December at home.
Right.
I care what you do in late January against a quality team when they come to town.
Florio and I were having this argument/discussion yesterday, and one of the things that I said is, to me, the biggest problem with these discussions about these really cold weather games or these windy games, whatever they are, almost all of those games would be against teams that are really good, like the Patriots, like the Ravens last year, who ended up winning the Super Bowl. And the Denver put up all these points. But anyway, look, I think that Peyton Manning, they did blow the 24-0 lead in New England. The one thing I would say about that, though, is that he drove 11 plays, 80 yards into the wind in the fourth quarter to tie it and send it to overtime. I'm not exonerating him or them for not being able to hold on to a big lead, but I think that there really aren't enough games to form any sort of definitive, like if you're going to count the Patriots games and in years that they won the Super Bowl or right after it, and you're going to count those, why can't I count Tennessee? Doesn't that sort of balance it out? Isn't everybody's statistics, don't you want to get to the mean? And so that's why I'd like to look at all those games individually before I say the guy either chokes in the cold or wind or whatever he's supposed to do.
I just think it's the quality opponent.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm factoring in is win a game when you have to win a game, no matter where it is. And, I don't know if weather plays that much of a role as much. New England, it didn't matter if you were playing them in sunshine. New England was a better team those, early years when they were winning championships. We'll come back with Peter. The website is the mmqb.com. Talk about the Redskins situation and what is going on. What happens now?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that Mike Shanahan can stay. I mean, I said 2 weeks ago that I thought he deserved another year because if you change administrations, you totally set back everybody on offense. And this is going to be the first year coming up that they have the full salary cap to spend after $36 million in cap penalties. But now, obviously, all that's changed. I don't see how Shanahan stays. And I think Dan Snyder's going to be in the market for his 8th head coach.
But does he get somebody who has a relationship with RG3? How important is that?
I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, who would have a relationship with RG3? Art Briles?
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea if that's even in the offing. My gut feeling is he's going to get somebody who is less headstrong than Mike Shanahan. That will be one of his first goals, and somebody who can work with Bruce Allen, because I think Dan Snyder really trusts Bruce Allen, obviously wants him to stay.
The Texans job opening, how coveted is that?
Extremely, because you have last year's Defensive Player of the Year at 23 or 24 years old, maybe this year's Defensive Player of the Year again. You've got some good young pieces. You've got Brian Cushing coming back, whether he can stay healthy or not, who knows. And you have Andre Johnson. And you probably are going to have the first or second pick in the draft. You might be able to go get Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, I think it's a fantastic job as these jobs go. Jacksonville Jaguars, Houston Texans. I mean, Bob McNair, said the other day that I can't believe we lost to Jacksonville twice. Well, I think America can't believe it either. But the fact is, Houston has some good talent on that team. They just totally need to take a U-turn and get somebody else other than the current administration to coach it.
But he actually mentions Jon Gruden by name.
Yeah.
Surprised at that?
No, because I think Gruden is very interested in coming back to coach next year. I think it'd be a perfect spot for him theoretically. But the one thing, I mean, Dan, this is important to realize with Houston. It's going to be difficult for Bob McNair to hire, first of all, a tremendously expensive coach. I just don't think he believes in paying a coach $8 or $9 million bucks. And I think it's also going to be hard for him to hire kind of a headstrong, very loud coach. That's why, as I said on Football Night in America, I think that Lovie Smith is a better fit for Bob McNair than Mike Shanahan. Lovie Smith is a conservative, low-key, strong but quietly strong guy. He fits better there than Mike Shanahan.
A couple of weeks ago on the website, the mmqb.com, you spent some time with an officiating crew. Give people a sense of what surprised you the most when you spent time with the officiating crew during the week?
I would say that I don't want to say it's an obsession with grades. It isn't an obsession with grades, but they're very preoccupied with this email that comes to them on Tuesday because it determines their fate in so many ways. I was with the Gene Steratore crew. I was in Gene Steratore's house when his grades came on Tuesday late in the morning.
Now, what's that mean when you get your grade? Overall grade for
No,
your game?
From the previous week. They had done a game, Arizona against Houston, and you get every play in the game is graded by an officiating supervisor who was at the game and then went home and watched the game on tape. So every play in the game is graded, and he looks at every official on the crew on that play, everything he can see, both in person and then on coach's tape and TV tape. He watches every official and what they did on the play. And if you make what they believe is a major error, they call it a downgrade. And Gene Steratore in the first 9 weeks of the year had 2 downgrades. And in this particular week, he had 2 in this one game. So you could just feel the pall cast over this house in Washington, Pennsylvania. And as we were getting ready to go, he's an NCAA Division I basketball official. He's going to Ann Arbor that day driving, so I'm going to drive with him. And he's getting ready to go, and he just shakes his head, and he goes, well, there goes the Super Bowl. I mean, because these guys all aspire
based
to
on
work
that
the Super Bowl.
performance.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily true. I don't know what he's done since then. I think he's done pretty well, but he's not going to be out of it because of that one thing. But you know how you say if you're at a baseball game and you go 0 for 5 and it's a big game down the stretch, well, there go the playoffs. We're not going to make it,
But to see them as people.
That was the greatest. That was the absolute greatest. To go into last year, the back judge in the Super Bowl is a guy named Dino Paganelli from Wyoming, Michigan, from an officiating family. He's a single father of 3 kids. 3 years ago, his wife died of melanoma, and he's raising these kids on his own with help of his family. And every day he goes and teaches gym and AP history in Wyoming, Michigan. And I went to his history class. The guy's a damn good teacher. He's really, really good. And he's got these kids at rapt attention talking about the Revolutionary War. And I'm watching him work with them, and it's really great because you see that they have their own lives. I went to a New York City housing executive in Lower Manhattan. He's in the belly of the beast. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's in a meeting talking about some really disaffected citizens down in Coney Island who are still ticked off that they're not getting relief from Hurricane Sandy. And then at 8 o'clock that night, he's home watching to see the formations of the Ravens and the Bears because he wants to know what he's going to be seeing this Sunday. It's really an interesting thing. And by the way, these guys don't want to be full-time officials, and I don't really think it'd help to be full-time officials myself.
One thing that Mike Florio brought up on Football Night in America is maybe taking replay out of the stadiums, maybe having
putting it in New York.
Yes. What do you think?
In a central. It's a fantastic idea. The league should do it, not only because it'd make the replay calls more uniform. And like, for instance, I cannot believe the Jeff Triplett call yesterday. Remember the one in Cincinnati where Ben-Jarvis Green Ellis, was down at about the 1 or 1.5 yard line. His legs and thighs hit, and then he sort of, rolled into the end zone. And, so he was down by contact. And so Triplett overturned the call saying, basically that there was indisputable visual evidence, that he was not touched. You couldn't tell whether he was touched or not touched.
No.
That is what's wrong with, to me, the whole replay process. Jeff Triplett views indisputable visual evidence different than Ed Hockley does, different than Walt Coleman does, different than Walt Anderson does. They try to make it uniform, but they can't. So they can't do it. Take it away from them. Put it in New York.
But also, if you've made the call, you don't want to go against your own call if you're looking under the hood. I mean, doesn't that factor in either, consciously, subconsciously?
Well, if you make a call that you have to understand that if you make a call that is really wrong, you could get a downgrade for it. So if you call something in the replay booth that is not overruling your own call, even though there's indisputable visual evidence, you'll get a downgrade. So that's going to hurt you more than if you just say, I screwed up, let's fix it.
Triplett screwed up yesterday.
In a big way, in my opinion.
Because it's one of those that if you make a call and you say, I think they rely on replay too much.
Yeah.
That they know it's there to help them if they make a mistake. It's better to call a penalty, just say, that was interference or whatever you might want to call it. That's a fumble. Toby Gerhart yesterday, they said he fumbled the ball. I didn't think he fumbled the ball, but to say that it's irrefutable and then you're looking at it, I'm looking at the same thing he's looking at. That's where you go, what am I missing here sometimes?
Yeah, and, one of the things I thought yesterday was some really good officials. Like, I think Ed Hockley's a good official. His late hit on the quarterback yesterday was absolutely, I thought it was just outrageous. Nick Fairley, that was a perfectly fine hit. It was ridiculous to have that call made. And I think sometimes guys have a bad call, and there's nothing endemic about that. But too many officials who are too good are just making mistakes at a really bad time for the NFL, because the NFL, to me, is having a bad year with the officials.
The mmqb.com, the officiating story, is it still up on the website?
It's still up. Yeah, you can find it.
Good.
Yeah.
You can go there.
Three-part series.
Check it out with Peter, spending time with the officiating crew. Good to visit with you as always, Pete.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good week.
Go to bed now.
Thanks.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.